the initial version, the T-2M. It was equipped with the C-44 gun, a massive 125mm cannon. It was 10.58 meters long. The shells were huge. They fired at a very high velocity. This gave the tank incredible armor penetration, while also carrying a devastating explosive charge. This made the weapon highly versatile, allowing it to both destroy enemy tanks and demolish buildings and concrete bunkers. It carried 60 rounds of ammunition. This allowed it to stay in the fight much longer than other heavy tanks of its time, like the IS-2, which only carried 28 rounds, or the American T-34, with 34 rounds. In terms of protection, the turret had 250 millimeters of protection, while the chassis had between 300 and 400 millimeters of effective armor, thanks to it being angled at 60 degrees. The sides had a thickness of 100 millimeters. All of this armor was made with rolled homogeneous armor, which was the strongest armor building method available. It featured a powerful 20-cylinder engine, which developed 1382 horsepower at 3,500 RPM. The tank weighed 52.86 tons, but its engine allowed it to reach a top speed of 65 kilometers per hour. Now let us look at the most modern variant, the T-2M. This model carries 2434 liters of fuel and 114 rounds for the main cannon, in comparison with the 400 liters and 60 rounds of the earliest one. The main gun now features a rapid autoloader. It also has an empty shell ejection system. This frees up vital space inside the vehicle. For secondary targets, it has a 20mm automatic cannon with 475 rounds, controlled by the gunner. The driver now also controls a 7.62mm machine gun, while the commander has a heavy 12.7mm machine gun. Also, the gunner sight was moved to the roof of the tank, giving the gunner a larger field of view, while also closing the distance between the gun and the sight, improving precision at low ranges. The mobility received a massive upgrade, since it now featured an individual transmission for each track, which would allow the tank to spin on its own axis. It also could accelerate much faster now, since the gears were rearranged, and now delivered the engine power more efficiently at all speeds. Several systems of the tank were improved. For example, the turret rotation and gun elevation motors are now faster. For crew survival and comfort, smoke grenade launchers were added, as well as extra hatches for each crew member, and a ventilation system was added. The engine cooling and air intake systems are now highly compact. This allowed the placing of a large rear door for field maintenance. External storage boxes for spare parts were also added. These also added a thin, extra layer of protection. Let us look at the new armor layout. The tank now features thick side skirts. These help protect the tracks from light projectiles. They also act as extra protection against chemical ammunition, which would now explode upon impact, far away from the real structure. The turret armor is now sloped and spaced. This made it weigh more tough for the same weight. It also turns out to be highly effective against chemical rounds. Overall, the armor is much thicker. The front of the turret now exceeds 600 millimeters of effective armor. The sides have over 400 millimeters. It is now completely impenetrable by any tank of its time, except from the exact rear. Unfortunately, the weight increased heavily. It went from 52 tons to a massive 90 tons. However, the enormous engine keeps it highly mobile. The T-2M can reach a top speed of 58 kilometers per hour, while also being able to climb hills with a 40-degree slope. In terms of agility, it outperforms most medium tanks of its era. Now, other things we can notice about the tank is how short it actually is. It is only 2.2 meters tall. For comparison, the T-90, a particularly short tank, is 2.22 meters tall. This is of course not counting the antennas, nor the machine gun. Here you guys can see a representation of how the side skirts also protect the tank from infantry. Look how this soldier tries to place a magnetic bomb at the side of our tank. As you can see, he can easily do so, but after the explosion, he notices no damage was done to the tank, since the skirts had almost an entire meter of separation from the chassis walls. The explosion could not transfer enough energy to the armor itself. The same effect would chemical rounds have, like high-explosive anti-tank, or high-explosive squash-head ammunitions. However, against conventional kinetic rounds, it only makes a difference from having the same thickness but with one single plate if the round does not enter perpendicular to the armor surface. These are the different camouflages of the tank for different environments. First, we have the standard camouflage. This is the first variant of the forest camouflage. This is the second variant of the forest camouflage, which adds tarps, designed for long periods of camping in a sniper spot covered in the tarps. This is the first variant of the desert camouflage. This is the second variant of the desert camouflage, the one with tarps, same concept as before. This is the first variant of the urban camouflage. And finally, this is the second variant of the urban camouflage, which also features a series of modifications specifically designed for urban combat, like the extra protection for the commander and the extra machine gun. This tank has suffered a lot of changes and modifications, solving problems and eliminating weak spots as they were spotted. After the T-2M was finished, engineers thought that the frontal turret armor was not thick enough, so for the next variant, the T-2M2, they decided to add external armor plates. A machine gun was also added at the top, and the fuel tanks now held 2,400 liters of fuel. The T-2M3 was the first which replaced the clutch-braking powertrain system with a twin-transmission powertrain. It also featured equal gears for both forward and reverse. Sadly, the new transmission took up space that was before occupied by the fuel tanks, lowering the fuel reserve to only 1910 liters. The fourth variant carried extra rounds stored in the chassis, for a total of 86 rounds. It also featured 2 extra gears for each direction, allowing the tank yet again to reach 65 kilometers per hour, even after the added weight. For the T-2M5, the 6 external plates on the frontal armor were lowered to only 4, since 6 offered an unneeded amount of protection. The 6th version appeared from combat experience. Grenade launchers, towing equipment, and engineering tools were added, as well as some external stowage boxes for maintenance equipment. The T-2M7 was a major turning point. The turret frontal armor plates were improved to more resistant and easier to produce ones. They now also covered the cheeks and most of the sides. More grenade launchers were added, as well as more stowage boxes for maintenance equipment. Another major upgrade of this model was the one given to the refrigeration system of the engine. After the armor upgrade of the T-2M7, engineers got obsessed with making the turret invincible. This made them develop the T-2M8, a version with angled armor in the turret front. This variant also changed the side skirts. The ones that before were only some 15mm plates, now had grown up to a 100mm one. The effective protection of the turret armor now was equivalent to between 600mm and 1000mm in the front, and about 220mm by the sides. They used a new and modern kind of armor, a spaced armor. The turret now had the same frontal armor while being lighter, and the cheeks were now thicker, canceling the weight loss from the front. Also, this version saw a modification in the transmissions. Now the first gear was made shorter, which not only gave the tank greater acceleration and climbing capacities, but also made the transmissions themselves smaller. The saved space was used for enlarging the fuel tanks and adding more ammo. The total amount was now 120 rounds, allowing the tank to stay even more time in combat. This was the first variant to surpass 80 tons. The following was the T-2M B1. Its turret armor was yet again changed. Now not only the front and the cheeks were angled, but the sides as well. This made the sides of the turret able to survive shells with up to 400 millimeters of penetration. The T-2M B2 removed the weak spots on the sides of the chassis by adding another 100 millimeters of armor in the top of the side walls, where the side skirts did not cover. For this, 6 rounds had to be removed. Cheeks were added to the chassis as well. Finally, the T-2M B3 saw the last major changes. An autoloader was added, removing one crew member. A secondary automatic 20 millimeter cannon was added.